everyone. My name is Hun, short for Honeydew, and I'm helping out with the Rogue Queers podcast behind the scenes. As you might have heard in the introductory episode, I proudly wear the title of Emotional Support Lesbian for Quince and Jurian. I'm hopping on here to chat with all of you about the podcast, our identities, and land acknowledgements. In the intro episode, Quince and Jurian talked briefly about the danger of a single story. The beauty of the queer community, and what we hope to highlight in this podcast, is that it encompasses people from all kinds of different backgrounds and intersectional identities. As white people from Ottawa, we represent a very small slice of that community. We do not experience the world in the same way as people of different racial or religious groups do, or even as people from different geographic regions, for example. The aim of this podcast is to inform people about different sexual and gender identities, as well as chat about popular discourse going on in the community. We acknowledge that we cannot fully understand experiences other than our own. We will try our best to bring an intersectional lens to the podcast to account for other identities, but we are not perfect and we will likely make mistakes. If ever something sticks out to you that we failed to acknowledge, please feel free to send us an email at roguequeerspodcast@gmail.com or shoot us a DM to our Instagram at roguequeerspodcast. As settlers on Turtle Island, now referred to commonly as North America, we believe it is important to acknowledge the land that we stand on as we create this podcast. Ottawa is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinabewaki and Algonquin peoples. Before settler arrival, Indigenous peoples on this land traded, foraged, and hunted while prioritizing the sustainability of their practices and the health of the land. Ottawa Territory is one of the regions in Canada that was never ceded to settler peoples. No treaties were signed to give permission to settlers to use the land in the abusive way that they have, meaning that the land still belongs to the Algonquin and Anishinabewaki people. We stand on unceded territory. My family immigrated to Canada from the United Kingdom in the 1800s to a land that was not their own. For generations, my family has benefited from the oppression of Indigenous peoples and practices. In school, I remember learning about colonizers as these faraway people who explored new lands and discovered a new home for incredible growth in future generations. Though these historical characters seem so far away, we as settlers still reap the benefits of their oppression of Indigenous peoples. These colonizing forces still exist today in neo-colonial ways. The disproportionate number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, severe health disparities in certain Indigenous communities, and the continuous dismissal of Indigenous priorities and practices are some of the many manifestations of these colonial forces. As we continue on with this podcast, we will strive to be mindful of the space we take up on the land we occupy as settlers. We encourage you to take time out of your day, whenever you may be listening to this episode, to learn more about the Indigenous history of the land you stand on. Resources to learn more will be provided in this episode's description. One I highly recommend is nativeland.ca. You can type in your address, and the website will tell you exactly which Indigenous lands you live, play, and learn on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Rogue Queers. Again, please feel free to send us any thoughts or comments you may have to our email at roguequeerspodcast@gmail.com or shoot us a DM to our Instagram at roguequeerspodcast. We hope you enjoy the podcast.